Alright, so this is a video I've been wanting to do for quite a while, but I really didn't know how I was going to go about it. So we're going to be doing a load development videos, or my process for developing a load. Now I have different standards for a load that I'm going to develop for specific purposes. So say I'm going to develop a load for a match, that has a completely different standard in my mind than a load that I'm going to develop for extreme long range shooting. Now my match loads, I want plenty of velocity, but velocity is not going to be my main criteria for a match load. My main criteria for a match load is getting the tiniest groups that I can consistently out of that load, while maintaining low standard deviations and low extreme spreads. With an ELR load, I still want those lower standard deviations and lower extreme spreads, because the further you get out, very small adjustments in velocity or very small differences in velocity can affect your elevation to target significantly. But with an ELR load, I'm not so much worried about getting those super tiny groups, or as tiny a groups as I am with my match loads, as long as I can maintain good standard deviations and maintain velocities high enough to be able to push these bullets out to those further distances with a flatter trajectory. So that is the difference in why I develop a load for one reason or the other. And I also have a couple other, I have hunting loads that I develop that have different standards and things like that. But today we're going to be developing a load for ELR. Now we're going to be doing 6mm Creedmoor. Now obviously I know 6mm Creedmoor is not typically an ELR cartridge, but if you guys have been following me for any amount of time, you know last year when the fields were clear, which they just got cleared off here, and deer hunting season for me is going to be coming to an end, at least rifle season. So because of that, I'm going to be getting back out and working on some ELR shots again once the fields dry up a little bit. So with all that, I need to develop a load for this particular new barrel. Now this is obviously, it's the same, functionally the same barrel that I had on here last year when I was doing ELR shots with the 6 Creedmoor. This is a 28-inch Criterion bull barrel, which is the same exact barrel that I had on it last year, but it is a different barrel. It's been swapped for a new 28-inch Criterion bull barrel. So because of that, I need to develop a load with the bullet that I found that shoots the best for that purpose of ELR and the 6 Creedmoor for this new barrel. So last year that was the 110 Match King, and so that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be developing a load with the 110 Match King for ELR purposes in the 6 Creed here. So let's get into it. So first off, the way I develop a load is very simple. Now, I kind of take from some people's processes and then fine tune them to a way that works best for me. Now, if you have a load development process that you like, that works for you, don't change them on account because I said this is what works for me. If you have something that's been working for you, I would suggest to continue with that. But this is what works for me. This is the way that I develop a load, and this is going to be, this is the way I have fine-tuned it to work for me the best. So first off, starting off, I know some people concentrate on jump, getting that jump exactly right before they even start on charge weights. Me, I'm the opposite. I start with charge weights before I do anything else. So first off, like I said, this is going to be an ELR load, so I'm not even going to worry about looking at the charge weights at the bottom of the pressure curve. So we're going right to our data, and we're going to go right to the top of the pressure curve. So with this, obviously it's a 6mm Creedmoor, one of the best powders for 6mm Creedmoor. One of the most widely used powders is H4350, and that's what we're going to be using for this load. I get really good velocities out of it, still able to push these 110 Match Kings to a very significant velocity that's going to get me out to those flatter trajectories. So with the 110 Match King, with the H4350, the higher end of that pressure curve is from about 41 grains down. So we're going to be looking at that whole 40 to 41 grains. We're going to try to find a load in that range at the top end of the pressure curve that is going to suit us for ELR purposes. It's going to have enough accuracy. Now, if you guys know me, my accuracy standard is always, I want the smallest group that I can get. But if with this limited velocity spread here, or limited charge weight spread, that limits me sometimes to what type of accuracy I'm able to get out of it, because I know that I don't want to sacrifice velocity. I still want my standard deviations good, I still want my extreme spreads good, but I do not want to sacrifice velocity in any sort of way. So that's what we're going to try to do here. We're going to try to get that velocity that we want and still get standard deviations and extreme spreads with a group that is sub half minute. Now, typically I'm looking at for 3/10 of an inch or better with all my loads. So that's not always possible, but that is what I strive for with every load that I work up. So we're going to start from 40.2 grains. Then we're going to go 2/10 all the way to 41 grains, which would be 1/10 over max charge weight in the published data that I have. So we go from 40.2, 40.4, 40.6, 40.8, and then 41 grains. We're going to look through that and see if we can't find a charge weight that suits us the best, that gives us good standard deviations, good extreme spreads, and gets us above 3,100 feet per second, because I'm going to need velocities of 3,100 feet per second and higher to get the flat trajectories that I want at those distances. So let's take a look at the charge weights, what we get, and we'll come back and talk about it. All right, so there you go. So as you saw, we starting at that 40.2, we still weren't up to that 3,100 feet per second that I am looking for. I'm looking now, it doesn't always have to, obviously if I can find a node that gives me the perfect tight groups down below that, that's what I'm going to settle on. But with this, that 40.2 and that 40.4 grains, the first two charge weights that we shot, didn't get us quite up to that 3,100 feet per second and above. Now, once we got to 40.6, as you will see, the groups actually started to tighten up a little bit. So we got, starting out here, 40.2, which obviously wasn't at a velocity that we were going to be happy with anyway, did have a fairly low extreme spread. It looks like we got 15 feet per second extreme spread across 40.2 grains, the 3 shots that we did. Now, a lot of people will do 2-shot groups when they do their ladder test. They'll do 2 shots, 2 shots, 2 shots, all the way up their ladder. Now, the reason I do 3 is because I'm looking for 2 things. I'm not just looking for that velocity curve to flatten out and look for a long spread where you have that velocity flatten out. I'm also looking for something that's also going to start to group. So if I can find a load that has really good extreme spreads and starts to group at that same time, then that's going to be something, that's a node that I want to look at. So 1.6 inches to start out. Now obviously I'm shooting off the bench. I wasn't really taking a whole lot of time trying to get these things as accurate as possible, but I was shooting groups that should be fairly accurate. So 1.6 inch group at 40.2 with fairly good standard deviation or fairly good extreme spread. 40.4, it started to tighten up a little bit, 1.2 inch, and we had about the same thing, almost the exact same thing, a 15-foot extreme spread, which would be something that I would accept. I want it to be tighter than that, but that is not terrible. Then we went up to our 40.6, and we got a 3/4 minute group. So 0.75 inch, and our standard deviations and extreme spreads remained right there in that same area. We had 17 foot per second extreme spreads across 3 shots, which is not terrible. Obviously, we wanted under that, but if that was something we would have to settle on. And on top of that, 2 of these shots went up above that 3,100 feet per second mark. So we're finally starting to get in the ballpark of where we want to be. Now, 40.8 grains. 40.8 grains is where things really started to come alive. So at 40.8 grains, all 3 shots were above our 3,100 foot per second range that we were looking for. And across all 4 shots, we had a 5 foot per second extreme spread. So unless this 41 grains was going to shoot better, that's probably going to be the node that I'm going to pick. It checks all the boxes, plus it's got a 0.46 inch group to start off with before we do any sort of seating depth adjustment. Then we went to obviously our 41, and our group opened up a little bit back to 0.94 inches. So still under minute of angle, but not something that I would definitely have to do more development with that. And our extreme spread opens up to about 12 feet per second. So still not terrible. I'm still well within something I would accept, but I'm really going to be taking a look at now this 40.8, because obviously the 40.8 shot the best, had the tightest group, and the lowest extreme spread. So now that we've got it, we've figured out our charge weight. Our 40.8 is going to be our charge weight. It checks all our boxes. Next, I'm going to go to our seating depth test. And with seating depth, I do it a little bit different than some people do. Because we've picked out a charge weight, what I'm looking for is which way do I need to adjust my seating depth to get those groups to start to shrink up. So what I do is I take 5.5 or 0.005 inches, or 5/1000ths of an inch, above and below that seating depth, and I'm going to shoot 2 3-shot groups at both those seating depths. All these charge weight tests were done at 20,000ths off the lands. So I'm going to load a 3-shot group up at 25,000ths off the lands, and a 3-shot group up at 15,000ths off the land. That's going to tell us which way we need to go with our seating depth, or if maybe we get right to it right off the bat. So here we go. Let's check those 2 out. All right, so with our 15,000ths jump, so we came up 5/1000ths from what we shot our full load or full charge weight test at, gave us a 0.87 inch. So not terrible, but as I noticed through that, our standard deviations actually opened up a little bit as well. Then when we went to our 25, so on the other side, we moved our seating depth back 5/1000ths. So 25,000ths, we got a 0.31 inch group. So that is something that I can deal with. 0.31 inches, that's in our standard, that's a 0.3 inch group. Our standard deviations actually remain the same throughout that whole stretch, and we're still above that 3,100 feet per second. So it looks like we have a low. We could settle right there on that, perfectly ready to go. Now, one thing I want to do now that we have a load picked out, now obviously I can fine tune this further. For the point of this video, making this video much longer, I'm not going to go through that in this video, but I could fine tune this a little more if I wanted to. I could at this point adjust the seating depth back 3/1000ths more, and then 3/1000ths more beyond that, and see if it continues to tighten up. And I probably will do that before we go out to shoot this at ELR distances. But right now this is checking all my boxes, giving us the groups that we want, giving us the standard deviations that we want, extreme spreads that we want, and the velocity. So right now we have a group that I could be happy with taking out to shoot ELR. Now one thing I want to do before we do that is I want to confirm this. I want to confirm this is going to be consistent. So I'm going to load up another 3-shot group. Actually I loaded up 4 for this. The first shot is cold bore. I had to go back in the house, load up 4 more shots. So these first 4 shots, I do want to say, the very first shot is a cold bore shot. So you may notice that it doesn't go to the rest of the 3-shot group. But my goal here is to make sure that this thing is going to maintain that tight group consistency. So here we go. Let's see how that does. All right, so there you have it. So that first shot, like I said, the cold bore shot did come a little bit further right, and that was kind of a pattern throughout this whole thing, as you noticed. It seemed like the first shot in both these strings went to the left, the left of the rest of the group. Now, that even if we count that cold bore shot in here as part of the group, which we will do, it's a 0.55 inch group, so just over half minute. Now if we throw that cold bore shot out and look at the other 3 shots, it's a 0.2 inch group. That is something I'm going to be happy with, and I feel really confident with that barrel heated up that I'm probably going to be able to maintain these under 0.3 inch groups consistently with this load. And now I have a load that is above 3,100 feet per second, is shooting sub 0.3 inch groups, and has a standard deviation. So if you looked at the 4 shots that we took here, the standard deviation remained extremely tight. The extreme spread remained extremely tight. So I have a load now. So that is my load development process from start to finish. Like I said, I could fine tune this. If I wanted to, I can throw the $2 barrel tuner on here. If you guys haven't seen that, go check out that video. And I could fine tune this even more if I decide I need to. But right now we have a load ready to go for ELR. So stay tuned for those videos. Hope you guys enjoyed this. See you guys next time. I'm out.